Hi, I'm RJ Christensen. I'm originally from Wyoming. I've been teaching art for 19 years in public high schools. Today I'm going to teach you the basics and fundamentals of wheel throwing and how to teach wheel throwing to your students. When we get out the clay, there's a tendency for some people to think, well, since I only need a little bit of clay, I'm only gonna cut a little bit off the top, like so. Slice a real thin piece off the top, fold it up. There, that's the perfect amount of clay I wanted. However, we're folding in all these air bubbles and we're making it more lumpy, which is gonna make it more difficult to throw on the wheel later on. So instead of a thin piece of clay, we're gonna cut a thicker piece of clay, and then you can come up through the middle or you can cut all the way through. Stand it up and cut that in thirds or in half, depending on the size you want to use or you want your students to use. This is a good block of clay because it's thick. We can grip it sideways like this and start wedging, about 1 pound. I'm going to turn it sideways or vertically so the thinnest part is facing up. Then I take the heels of my hands and I put them at the top corner. My fingers are on the side because I want them holding this like it's a monkey head. I'm gonna push like that with my heels of my hands. I'm not spreading the clay out really far. I'm pushing down and forward just a little bit at a 45-degree angle. Then I roll the clay back at a 90-degree angle right onto the nose of that monkey face. I push down again with the heels of my hands, keeping my fingers on the side. I do not want to squish in with the tips of my fingers. You're basically just holding the sides like this with the palms of your hands, and your fingers are there to help guide it, but you're not squishing with the fingertips. Don't overly squish it. We don't want pockets right here. Some wrong ways that some students wedge is they will squish it out too far, and then when they bring it back, they have those pockets right in here. And then we're having a folding happening right here in front. Instead, we want to push down part way and get a slight folding and layering in the front, but no pockets on the side. You'll be able to see the layers right here on the nose of the monkey face. Push with the heels of our hands, holding the sides with the palms, and then we just roll back lightly with our fingertips, not leaving any fingerprints in the clay. And once they've got this technique down, going about this speed, then they can speed it up a little bit. After wedging, we want to roll it back, putting pressure down on it and flattening out that monkey's nose so that it's a nice, smooth log, but it's still nice and tight like a roll. We don't want it to spread out into a hot dog. Then we just tip it to the left, tap it a few times. That is the bottom of the clay when we put it on the wheel. So we've got our wedged clay and we tipped it to the left, remember? And we tapped it a few times on the wedging table to make sure it's flat. We're gonna put it in the center of the wheel. A lot of teachers will teach their kids to smack it down really hard so it sticks, but my students can't get it in the center when they do that. So I'm just gonna have them tap on the center of the wheel, make sure it's in the center, tap it down, and squish it down around the edge. That's called sealing the clay to the wheel head. It's important that we don't get the wheel head or the bat wet before we start wheel throwing. Once it's sealed down to the wheel head, we're going to start the wheel. What we're gonna do is have the wheel going medium slow speed, not medium, medium slow. You're gonna teach the kids not to get it wet yet. You're gonna teach them how to hold their hands. This is the fundamentals. If you get the fundamentals right, you'll be able to center and wheel throw a lot easier. Okay, so put your hands like two karate chopping hands. The left hand is gonna be flat like this, like a karate chop. Your right hand makes a fist, like this, like a karate punch. We're gonna put the sponge in the top of that fist. We don't want the sponge touching the clay yet. We're gonna put it in the top of the hand like that, and this is your top hand. The left hand is your side hand. It doesn't matter if you're left-handed or right-handed, we're gonna use both hands equally this whole time. You're always using two hands when you wheel throw. Now you can get your sponge medium wet. You put your elbows down on your hips. A lot of people think you put it down on your knees, but that is less stable than back here on your hips where you can push with your whole body weight. Usually I demonstrate in front of the whole class, then I demonstrate while they're throwing with me, then they do it by themselves while I stand around and give pointers to each one of them as they go. I keep the whole class on the same step. Once everybody's got their hand position and the speed correct, we learn how to center. So to center, I tell everybody, get your hands in the right position, don't touch the clay. Once they're holding their hands correctly and their elbows are down and in, then I let them touch the clay. You need to make sure they always keep their hands pressed together. If their hands become separate, it's very easy for the clay to be off center. But if your hands are together and unified, you can get that clay to center up pretty quickly. Remember, the left hand is on the side, the fist is on top. The fist should not be turned down or in. You're using the blade of your hand or the outside edge of your hand by the pinky. And that's what's pushing on the top of the clay. Also, your side hand isn't a perfectly flat side hand. It's cupped just a little bit. You're using that thumb muscle, this big fleshy part, around the top corner. So like that. Once the kids have their clay medium centered, it might still be a little lumpy like this, but once it's smoothed out and it doesn't have the big lumps, now we can speed up a little bit to medium or medium fast speed. Medium speed's good for beginners. You want to make sure their clay is nice and soft. If you're giving them recycled clay or clay that's slightly dry, that's just going to make it more frustrating and difficult for them. And the key component of teaching wheel throwing is early success. There's so many students out there with low self-esteem, and that early success gives them the self-esteem, self-assurance that they can do this. So to get those wobbles out of the clay, I teach my students to make volcanoes. You're going to push down and in with the outside hand while releasing a little pressure with your top hand. If they don't tilt their hand toward the center like this, they will slide the clay off the wheel. It's really important that they're pushing down and in to keep the clay on the wheel. It's also important to use this thumb muscle to round out that top corner and keep it from becoming a mushroom or keep it from getting paper thin on the corner. Go back down and back up. Be sure that they're pushing into the bottom corner of this centered clay. If they only push right here at the top, then the bottom will still be off center. So you have to really use that blade or that little inside knuckle of your pinky finger to get down at the bottom. And as they're bringing it back down, make sure it stays a volcano shape and doesn't become a mushroom. Even after I've done 2 volcanoes, it's still a little wobbly. So I'm gonna do it 1, 2, 3 times more until the wobbles go away. You'll know it's centered if your hands are holding perfectly still when you're holding the clay. Once we have our clay centered with a nice flat top and angled sides, we're ready to open. Remember, it's supposed to look kind of like a half of a volcano. Have the students get their sponge in their left hand and get it medium wet. Your fingers are going to make a V. They can open the clay this way. They can open the clay this way. They can open the clay this way, but I'm going to show you the way that works the most effective for all my students. You're going to make a V shape with your fingers, but your left hand is going to be slightly on top of the right hand. You're pushing down with your middle finger in the very center. Make sure the tip of the middle finger does not go past the center of the clay. Think of that center of the clay as just a teeny tiny point, and if the front of your middle finger goes past that, the clay grabs it and makes it start wiggling side to side. The point of the middle finger is right on the center of the clay. My wrist is bent, my elbows are still down. My left hand, the middle finger is right on top, close to the fingernail, and pushing down and back a little bit. Did you know that? You're supposed to push back just a little bit on that finger towards your body. That's going to keep it very centered. If this is a clock, we're not pushing straight back at 6 o'clock. I'm pushing more at 5 o'clock. If they make a slight V shape, that's okay. If they make a steep V shape like this, they're doing it wrong. They need to pick up their wrist higher. So correct that right away so you're not getting bowls instead of cylinders. Make sure they soak up the water on the inside with their sponge so that you can see the bottom of the cylinder. We've opened it down to about 1.5 centimeters thick to 1/2 inch. Stop the wheel, use your needle, and just push it through the bottom. Oh, now we can see about 1.5 centimeters. What about the hole? It'll fill in, no problem. We'll just put a little bit of pressure on that. It'll be gone. Now, we gotta do one of the most important steps in centering and wheel throwing. We have to recenter. You drop your left wrist like this. You put your fingers on the inside of the cylinder, and you put your thumb on the outside of the cylinder towards the bottom. Teach the students to hold their hands in that shape or that form and place it inside the cylinder without squeezing. Now you take your right hand, you grip the sponge like this, like it's eating a sponge, and you press that into the top outside corner. Now you're gonna press everything in and compress it. You're not changing the whole shape of the cylinder, you're just compressing it so it doesn't have any wobbles or bumps. There are many different ways to wheel throw. I'm just showing you the ones that have been successful for me and my students. Some people speed it up for the opening process and the recentering to medium fast. I think that's a pretty good thing to do, but it still works on medium speed. So we're gonna slow it down for the pulling process. It should be going medium slow again, like when we very first started throwing. You're going to make an alligator mouth with your left hand, alligator mouth with your right hand. Now this alligator is gonna go into the cylinder vertically like this. Straight fingers, straight thumb. That's gonna go inside. If you have a little opening, use 3 fingers or 2 fingers. I'll probably use 3 fingers on this cylinder. Your right hand grips the sponge like this, like the alligator has a sponge completely in its mouth, and the end of the sponge is out past the middle finger. I'm gonna hold the cylinder lightly with my left hand. I'm gonna put the sponge right on top of that thumb. My thumbs are going to be touching like this, but with the sponge. Now, the middle finger on top of the sponge is in line with the middle finger on the inside. They squeeze, and I make sure to keep my wrist higher than my hand so that the cylinder goes straight up or in a little bit. If you notice the cylinder is coming out, it's because they've dropped their wrist and that's changed the angle of their fingers and it'll start coming out. So if you see a student doing this, you just tell them to raise their wrist. And all of a sudden that thumb, the edge of their thumb will start pushing it in. It'll make it a vertical cylinder. And if they still can't get that vertical cylinder, tell them to push in a little bit more with the tip of their finger on the sponge like this. When they get to the top rim, they hold and then slowly release. A lot of students, they start slow at the bottom, and as they come up, they get faster and faster, and then they just drop it off the top. Or they squeeze off the top, and that top rim gets thinner and thinner. Pretty soon you have a paper thin rim like this. We don't want to have a thin top because when it's leather hard and we flip it over to trim, it'll damage that really thin rim. Uh-oh, now we have a little wobble and waving going on down here because we pulled too fast that last second half. So to help the students fix that, we're going to use the side of the finger here and the side of the finger here together like this to even out those waves and make it straight and recenter it. What if the top gets really messed up like that and it's all off center? Well, we center it the best we can from bottom to top. We hold our wrists together like this, pressing in with the thumb muscles and just a little bit with the fingers. And we just hold our wrists together with the elbows in. We press lightly on the clay and we come up from the bottom to top like that. So now we've transferred the off-centeredness from going side to side. Now it's going vertically, up and down. And then we use a needle tool at the top. To hold the needle tool, you put both pointer fingers like this, keep your elbows down, and then just slice in like you're slicing butter. You're not stabbing the clay. When kids stab the clay, then it goes off center, we get a mess. So you're just slicing it with the tip of the needle tool. And teach them to do it slowly and just hold it steady, about 1/4 inch below the top. They can pick it up like that with the needle tool. Once you cut the rim, you'll have a muddy edge. So So you gotta clean that up. This is how you clean it up. You hold your fingers like this with your left hand, your thumb, and your pointer finger. Hold it like that. And your right hand holds the sponge on top. And you just delicately touch that to the rim, and now it's clean. Notice how my body holds its position when I center, when I open, when I pull. I don't move my body position until I've released the clay. Then I can sit up, I can rinse my sponge, wipe my hands if I want, get ready to do the next step. We still have kind of a basic cup. Even on their first cylinder, I teach them how to shape it. We usually only have 1 or 2 minutes before cleanup, so I say have fun. Make something cool out of it. Don't just leave it a cylinder, that's boring. How you push with your fingers on the inside and the outside is gonna affect the shape that you have with your cylinder. We can push our fingers in at the bottom, and we can put the inside fingers in the middle and push out. Check that out. It's like a belly. Then we can bend the top rim out. That's called flaring. Look at that cool vase shape. Maybe we don't want that. Maybe we want to bring it in at the top. What if you want a bunch of ridges? You can just push with your finger all along there. It helps to have your finger on the inside to help support it. Kids love doing this. They get to experiment with shape and form. If you tell them just to cut it off and recycle it, they might not be excited to come in and work the next day on the wheel. So let them experiment with shaping that form. If they don't like it, they just make it back into a cylinder and then do something else. Is that the shape you want? Maybe not. Maybe you want more of a bowl. To make a bowl, make that cylinder again. We hold the bottom and we just pull out the top as we raise our hand, pulling out and making a bowl shape. How about that? After you finish making whatever form you want, take the throwing knife or any other trimming tool that you prefer, and you're going to trim out the bottom of that so that when you flip it over and trim it, when it's leather hard, you have as little work as possible. You take the throwing knife with the spoon facing down. It's gonna go like this, but you're gonna turn it slightly away from the pot. Then you push down into that slopey bottom and trim away the extra mud. Then we take the pointed side of the throwing knife and we angle it away from the pot so that when we trim it, the mud goes away from the pot. See how it's tilted at this angle? That way any mud that hits it is gonna go out. Then we go back again, trim some more with that spoon facing down and away. The more they trim at this point while it's centered on the wheel makes the trimming later on so much easier. So I tell them to trim as much as they can and make that pot look how they want it to look. It's important though not to leave it muddy, because when we lift it off the wheel, we want to leave as little fingerprints and damage as possible. And that's it. To cut the pot off the wheel, we get the wheel head wet. Take your wire tool between your middle finger and your index finger with the handle on the inside, so your hands are facing out. Then you wrap it around the outside of your hand, stop your wheel, push down with your thumbs, pull through. Maybe the student has bigger hands or the pot is bigger and you need more space on that wire. You just wrap it around one hand and push down with your thumbs. Okay? Since we've trimmed the mud off the bottom here with the throwing knife, then we can just clean our hands a little bit, grip it in 6 different points. It's touching here, 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 here. 6 points are touching, so there's less pressure at any one given spot. If you want, in my studio, my students like to blow dry it for a couple minutes if they have time at the end of class before lifting it. Pottery is a lifelong process. We want to start with something simple and eventually work our way up to the more difficult things. If your students want to take on a more challenging project, let them. But we learn things a step at a time. We start with cylinders, we work up to interesting shaped cups, taller vases, and maybe eventually a nice flower vase or a teapot. Students should remember not to go huge right at the beginning. We want to start small and work our way up. Just like learning anything. You start with the fundamentals and the baby steps, and then you learn a little bit more as you grow.